I will go ahead and call to order this meeting of the Community Preservation Committee at 5:32 p.m., January 12th, 2023. Do a roll call vote, just because we're so spread out here. Roll call attendance. Garth?
Here.
Travis, I'm here. John?
I'm here.
Tom?
Here.
Susan? Okay. Giannis?
Here.
Giannis. Dave?
Here.
Donna is not here. And Wisty?
Here.
All right, so everyone is here except Donna. And she gave notice that she wasn't going to be here. So, okay, first on the agenda is approval of minutes. Date that was December 15th, 2022.
Those look good.
Dave?
I move they be approved.
All right, motion to approve. Second by Susan. Any other comments or discussion? Okay. Hearing none, we can do a roll call vote to approve that real quick. Garth?
Yes.
Garth. Okay, Garth is a yes. Wisty?
Yes.
John?
I was not here, so.
All right, abstaining. Susan?
Yes.
Giannis?
Dane as well.
Abstaining. Donna is not here, sorry. Tom?
Abstain.
Abstaining. And Dave?
Aye.
All right, and I'm also an aye. Okay, so that passes with 3 abstaining. This isn't on the agenda, but we last meeting, Susan took notes. But going forward, we need someone to be our permanent note taker. Susan, are you volunteering?
No, I'm not volunteering.
Okay.
Seems like you were.
I have a
Smart
suggestion.
person.
I have a suggestion that this rotate
Okay.
and that, because otherwise it seems like it always ends up with the women and that doesn't make any sense to me. So, I would like to see it rotate and we could do that in some kind of alphabetical plan, something, however you want to do it.
What if the person who's assigned to do it is not there that time?
That's true.
We could skip them that.
Yep.
And come back.
It's fine either way with me, sure.
Okay, so should we go alphabetical down the list after Susan then, I guess, and then we'll rotate back around.
Okay.
All right. Are we going last name or first
I think you
name?
should go by first name now.
Okay, Thomas, it's you next.
Wisty starts with a
Whiskey,
W.
that's the way we
No,
roll.
Thomas next. Thomas next.
We'll start with Susan.
Yeah, I
Okay.
did it last week. I did it last month.
Oh, which
So
true.
the
Yeah,
next
she
one
did
is
it last
Tom.
Yeah.
Just
All right, Tom, you taking notes today then?
Oh.
You did 10?
I'm not in a really good spot to do that, but I will do my best.
Okay, well, we'll also have the recording. Yep, we have the recording if you need
Well,
to.
that'll be
pick up
helpful. If
anything
I can
after.
have the recording, I can transcribe from that. So I don't have to worry about doing it.
You should still take some.
This is why we shouldn't, if you revolve, it's, the quality control is going to be not so much, I think.
I think it's a good skill for everyone to have.
I've been
I
taking minutes
agree,
for
I
a
agree.
long time.
But I'm not sure if this is the crucible in which that we want to test ourselves, but.
Well, how about for right now, we'll rotate and then, when we get to our reorganization next year, we can figure out if we want to change
Just
that.
remember, when I take minutes, anybody who talks or speaks up, it will be discussion occurred regarding.
Okay. Okay. So let me get back to the agenda here. Okay, so new business, letter of support for historic properties survey. Kristen, I don't know if you,
I sent it just to you.
okay,
But some of you might remember, Athena, who's the city's grant writer, was at a meeting back in the summer. And they had originally been proposing that CPC funding would be used to help do a historical property survey. But then they found another funding source for it. So now she has requested a letter of support instead from the CPC using that new funding source that they're applying with. So I don't know if you need a vote or just give Travis permission to sign the letter of support.
yeah, I guess I would say if there are no objections, I can write a letter of support for that project. Okay,
Yep.
I'm seeing no objections, so I will do that, and let me write that down.
Looks like she has a draft already for you.
Yeah. Okay. That was easy. So then we are on to old business, which is project application review. And the first project that we have on the agenda is the Highland Park Trail restoration. And just to remind everybody, it's been a month since we've done this. So just to remind everybody, we started out having people like represent their projects and we didn't find that helpful. So we're just going to go right into asking questions to the applicant. So Kim Boas,
Yep.
I believe. If you want to come up to the table, it might pick up your voice better on the microphone. Plenty of open seats.
Yeah, I expected a bigger crowd.
Yeah, well, everybody's out there, but.
Well,
All right, so does anyone want to start off with any questions?
I do.
Okay, go ahead.
They're not bad questions. I just have a couple. And I don't know who can answer this, but I like the whole idea and the maps and what they're doing and how and all of that. My question is, can we use a more, it won't be as pretty, utilitarian type sign in posts going throughout? Let me finish. Let
Gary,
me finish.
get
Chris.
wrong.
So different project.
They're different projects. This is the one about the trails being fixed.
Fixed, not signed. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I had the wrong one on top. I apologize. I will hold those thoughts.
Okay, Susan?
Yeah, I have two questions. One is that I'm confused about whether it's recreation or open space. And if somebody can clarify that for me, I'm not sure if Kevin can clarify that for me, but I need to, I'm having, depending on what it is, I think it relates to what we can do. And so I'm trying to figure that one out.
Yeah, I mean, I can clarify that this would definitely be recreation and not open space.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. The other thing I had, the other question I had is if you only had funds for one piece of the project, because I know there are three different, parts of the project, which is the most pressing or important from your point of view?
well, from my point of view, I think it would be the trail restoration as a demonstration of what should be done and can be done and how it can be done. So we begin to get a little more experience on how to maintain trails. The other parts are not quite as urgent. There's actually another trail that could also be redone similar to the trail that is being proposed if people didn't want to do that one. They're very similar. They have the same erosion issues. But I just put that out there. But definitely the trail restoration is the key to this.
Thank you very much.
I think Dave had his hand up next and then we'll go to Garth.
A couple of questions. I think this is a really good project, but I have a couple of questions. Who is AmeriCorps? Could you tell me a little bit more about AmeriCorps and the Appalachians Mountain Club and how they do all the work here?
The Appalachian Mountain Club has its headquarters in Boston, and they maintain a series of trails and huts up in the White Mountains. And at one point, even out on Greylock, they had a large hut. So they do a lot of work with trails all over, a lot in New Hampshire, as well as they've done work here in Massachusetts. I can't cite specifics, but they work with AmeriCorps, which is
they're going to be maintaining the Ziegler cabin up in Northfield as a local project.
Okay, great. Thank you. As for AmeriCorps, it's a federally funded effort to employ disadvantaged young people, and teaching them skills and how to work together and completing projects. So it's a subsidized workforce, and AMC coordinates all of that with the federal government.
Yeah, AmeriCorps is very, very, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, very active on the Cape. They have a house and 8 or 10 people, kids that come in for a year and they work. It's a great organization.
And can I ask, who would they report to here? Would it be Christie, or who's in charge? Who would be in charge of this project?
I think it would be Christie, so she can respond to that better than I can.
Yeah, it would certainly, Dave, be I would be the point person, being the city overseer of this property, but obviously working very closely with our applicant. I would also share that up in Savoy, they do a lot of work up in Savoy as well on the trails up there, and work closely with Hollamont School. So they are all around us, just not in Greenfield.
Thank you.
Okay, Garth?
Yeah, as a often user of the Highland Park, I like all these ideas. It feels like the trail rerouting one is like making a new recreational facility thing, that some of them end up feeling a little bit like trail maintenance, and I realize the frustration and the idea of how come the town hasn't done anything in the last 40 years, kind of thing. But I feel like on the CPA, it's going to be a harder sell to be like, oh, this will be great to show what we could or should be doing, when the town to date, and possibly in the future, unless a lot of us really push, it isn't actually going to happen. I guess that's just my comment on that. So I would suspect when we get to voting on it, there'll be a difference between the trail maintenance and the making a new trail, doing stuff like that, versus drainage improvement sort of setup.
And Garth, I can add that if everyone remembers from our last meeting in December, you and I and Christian, we all met with Stuart and went through all of these projects, and Stuart from the Community Preservation Coalition. And on this project specifically, he said, be careful of maintenance, must meet the definition of capital improvement, but this one looks like it should be okay. That was his assessment of the project overall. And just going to the definition of capital improvement in CPA that he was referring to, it says capital improvement, reconstruction or alteration of real property that, one, materially adds to the value of the real property or appreciably prolongs the useful life of the real property, or two, becomes part of the real property or is permanently affixed to the real property so that the removal will cause material damage to the property or article itself. And 3 is intended to become a permanent installation or is intended to remain there for an indefinite period of time. So that's the definition we have to meet for capital improvement.
Cool.
That wasn't really a question for you, but.
No.
Is there, let me.
Yeah, go for it, Tom.
Okay. Is there, a long-term, it was written about, but can the city commit to maintaining these trails over time?
That's a question for Christie.
Well, I think it's more DPW than it is Christie on the actual maintenance.
Yeah, obviously I work very closely with the Parks Division. This would fall under the Parks Division.
Mhm.
And as Garth said, there's no, unless you guys advocate for more park staff, the Parks Division has lost people. So that is why we have not been able to keep up with it. The knowledge that we had years ago when Irv Sanders was here, he's the one that helped with all these trails. And the newer staff that we have, the few that we have, do not have the expertise. And that's what's amazing about this project that Kim has put together, is that he has brought in people who can help train and educate us
Yep.
in hopes, even if we have to do it with volunteers, when I say us, me, it is pretty much the rec department and the commission to help move it forward and not have this happen. But we're still going to need, the materials to do it, some equipment. So I'm not sure if that really gives you your answer, but we continue to grow in Greenfield, but our staffing levels do not go up.
Yeah, I can appreciate that very well. I just wanted to ask, and that was a good, perfect answer. Thank you.
So I actually have a couple of questions. One of them was, I was trying to find it really quick, but I know in the application it said that the funds were only for the work itself. Oh yeah, it said additional resources such as lumber or stone can hopefully be obtained from rock debris piles and downed or recently cut trees. And I guess that adds in a little uncertainty about like what,
Some of the
Yeah.
aspects, yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's always been a concern. I'm hoping that when we get to it, we have a better definition of what is needed. And then, my plan is to, ask the public for some donations for funding, talk to, local gravel pits or whatever, see whether or not they can provide things. I think there's a lot of stone out there that could be used for these turnpikes, and so it could be as easy as that could be the resource as opposed to lumbers, because if you have down trees that are laying around that have been cut down or they're just down. And they're fairly, they're not rotted or anything. It's the matter of then you have to split them and shape them and all that. And I don't know the extent of what the AmeriCorps people can do. So, so yes, there is some uncertainty as to what other materials may be needed.
I guess that makes me wonder if you were able to estimate, like it would be nice if you had an estimate for like how much it might cost for all these materials, and like if like I'm thinking like even if it was like $20,000 total for the project and that gets you all the materials too, that might make it more attractive for us to fund it even with more money. That way we know it's like a complete project.
Yeah, it's not uncertain.
I could ask again, but I asked that question specifically and they just would not get down to that.
Okay.
This is the AmeriCorps?
This is AMC. Who actually would, do the planning and assessment.
And if I can ask, so then so the level of commitment from AMC and AmeriCorps, that's a lock?
Oh, I think if we get the funding, it's a lot. Yeah. Yeah, they
Yeah,
will.
because, I mean,
They work for hire, so
Yeah.
if you're willing to pay them.
Yeah.
If there's a job to be had, they'll put it in the queue, yeah.
Okay, and what about bikes on the trail?
Well,
And how
you
does
know,
that affect that?
bikes on the trail can be a problem, particularly now that the trails are not well maintained. The main trail, the big horseshoe loop around Sachem's Head,
Yeah.
is in pretty good shape. It's starting to erode in spots, but there are also large sections that get wet and stay wet for a while, and then the bikes run over them and, you know, make more ruts and just compact things more and more. So
Yeah, well, I guess my question is more about the building of the turnpikes, and any work that you guys do would affect the usability of the trails for bikers. And would the bikers have a problem with that? Or would it create a hazard for the bikers that then we would now have to deal with, like an unforeseen outcome of the project is people go out there and they're on their bikes and
I
they're
don't
ripping around,
foresee that.
and all of a
The
sudden they're
people-
like, whoa, what's
You
going
know,
on? And
nobody's on skinny tires out there. Everyone's got big fat tires. I've seen every array of bike on every trail.
And the work that you're proposing would not,
I don't think so.
Okay.
No
Yeah,
obstacles.
as a mountain biker, I haven't, you know, I've done a bunch up there, not too much recently, but the rerouting of that like you can't. It's probably somebody could.
Go straight up.
Probably most cyclists can't bike up the current like super steep washed out portion. So the rerouting would make it more doable and you know, right, sort of generally more bikeable and less you know, less erosion would be happening. You know, in general, the NEMBA folks try to encourage people to not go biking when stuff's super wet, and you know, and you're going to be ripping up trails and making a mess of things. There is obviously some people will go out whenever, but there is definitely a culture of trying to like not destroy the trails you want to use for recreation.
And I think Tom had a question.
I did, but I think it got answered. I guess, you know, if he doesn't have all of the pieces put together, you know, and they may have to go out and procure donations, this may be the impetus to allow them to go out and get those donations. You know, we've got a commitment for the 15. We need 5 loads of gravel to make it work.
I've done that kind of work before.
Yeah.
It's thankless, but you know,
Yeah,
you do it.
I have a question for, Chrissy, go ahead, and then I have a question for you, actually.
I was just going to comment about some of the washed out areas, as Kim had mentioned. The material just piles up at the bottom, so we certainly can repurpose and reestablish that back up sort of the hill once we add more material, so it's more compact as well. So I'm not sure that we're going to need, you know, truckloads and truckloads, but
Right.
certainly we will need some material.
I guess I have one comment, which is that I don't think it mentions in here anything about permitting through the Conservation Commission, and I know a lot of this areas in like resource areas or buffer zones, so that's something to keep in mind.
Yes, that not only that, but as Christy mentioned to me, and I had thought of it but didn't mention, is that it's close. Part of that rerouting of the trail is close to the power line, so we'll have to talk to Eversource.
Okay. And then I had a question for Christy, which was, I know there's another project that's before us about, you know, mapping trails and signage. And I guess I'm wondering how this, like if this trail gets, if a trail gets rerouted, you know, is that going to affect the I'm thinking of like order of operations, like would this project happen first and like a trail might get rerouted and then trail mapping is gonna happen if that other project was funded too?
Yeah, so assuming it's a package deal, hint, 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 that this would happen first. Well, obviously because we want to stabilize the existing trail and then we can figure out the best way to reroute. And then when we do the mapping of all the trails, then it's in the GPS for our new maps and whatnot and markings.
Okay. I just wanted to bring that up because there's kind of like this overlap between the two.
It's a great question.
Can I ask a question? This is for Christie. I think we discussed by email very briefly regarding there is a state grant out there for trail work that is currently in the application process. Is the city doing anything with that? Or do you think we have a timeline, if this would get approved, that we could maybe apply for some funding through that to help this project out?
The city is not applying because of match and the timelines just don't match up. Like if we were to be able to get money this year and hold it and then use it as a match for a future year, then it would work. But there's so many restrictions with when we can get money and when it has to be spent. Sadly, these grants don't always work together.
Right. Right. Yeah, I thought the application deadline was in mid-February, so I thought that was a little tight.
We did attend the seminar, and I did last year in hopes of moving some of the trail work forward, but then I got the skate park grant, so it's hard enough managing one, let alone two big projects, so we had to put that on hold.
I guess I would just point out that like for the future, if you did want to do that, apply for CPA funds and then, use those as a local match towards that other. I mean, I think that's something that could be done through the CPA process too, because it wouldn't have to be used, immediately. Like that's up to us to decide, to work out when it could be, when it has to be used. So that is a possibility in the future if you ever want to do that, I guess.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I'm sure obviously it's a bumpy first year for all of us, right? Figuring out how to do this. So we'll be back next year, I promise.
Sure. All right. Did anyone have any other questions or comments before we move on to the next project? All right. And I'll just add that there is a public comment period at the end of this meeting. So if the public wants to, write down your thoughts now, if you have any, and then we can come back to you at the end. So, all right.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Travis, can I just mention one thing before Kim leaves? Because you also will have public meetings at the end, right? So that he knows that there'll be more time for supporters to come and, cheer this project on.
Yeah. So, I mean, basically the process is we're meeting with all the applicants, we're getting public comments as we go. We're going to have a form that we're going to release online that people can comment on. And then we're going to have more public meetings after that. And then we're going to have a public hearing where people, get everyone's feedback before we vote. So there will be more opportunities going forward.
Yeah, I know that, but I can't see all the little people on the other side of you in my screen. So I just want to make sure they all knew that before they left.
Yeah, I know you know that. I'm just saying it so everyone knows.
And for whatever we put out there, and we make recommendations to the council. Presumably there is also public comment portion at the beginning of the council meeting where they're deciding, be like, oh yeah, these CPA people know what they're doing, or they don't know what they're doing, or how come they only gave this 5,000, we should give it 20,000, or whatever it is. The council does have final say.
All right. So the next project on the agenda is Phil Elmer and the Highland Pond Fountain.
Yep.
Welcome.
I do have some updates on it, but you should ask, you want me to do the updates?
Yeah, if you have updates, I'd say go ahead.
The day after I submitted this, I finally got a call from people who do this, experts, and One thing they said was that they recommended against a solar powered one. They said if you can get electrical to that hut, that would be cheaper and better. And I've talked to, anyway, electrical is an issue because what we have there is old and needs to be fixed up. And so that would be an additional expense, but I believe that DPW and the town engineer would take that over and might actually pay for it. The other update is I assumed that dredging was going to be a really big, complicated operation. And now that I know that they have these little floating dredges, basically a little barge with a backhoe, that can be done much less disruptively. You can make a path to the deep part. You can make a deep part without having to build a dam, drain half the pond, or another proposition would be to drain the whole pond, but I think there would be problems, environmental problems with that. So I think this is just an appetizer for a larger project, but I think the larger project just got smaller. Okay.
Okay. All right. Do we have questions? Tom, your hand's still up. Oh.
No, I put it down and put it back up.
Okay. All right. You're go ahead then.
My question on the dredging, what happens with the dredge spoils? Where do they go?
Yeah, if I were the engineer, and I might be, I would dump them where there's a swamp now and let it de-water there. The other side of the dam is a big swamp.
Right.
And it's a logical place to put the stuff you've dredged up or raked up actually, and let it de-water there. And then you'd have a lot of material if you wanted to
Restore the trails?
Yeah.
I was thinking,
I'll just say you might have Wetlands Protection Act issues with dumping in a wetland.
All right.
But I think the dredging is like not what we're talking about funding right now, though. That's like a next step that could be funded in the future.
Okay. All right. I know. I just.
Yeah. Just to clarify for everybody.
I have a question in that case. Can this happen without the dredging? I guess what are we funding if it can't actually be done without dredging the pond?
We're funding aeration, which helps fight eutrophication. It puts more oxygen in the water. It supports the fish, the aquatic life. It would reduce the amount of duckweed that sort of coats the whole surface and chokes off oxygen late in the summer. So it would be a first step towards the dredging. It's also, in my mind, a signal to the people who use the park that the town cares about the pond and is willing to do something to help it.
Susan?
Yeah, first of all, question for you, Travis. I assume this is also recreation and not open space?
Yes.
Okay, good enough.
Yeah, we don't have any actual open space projects this year.
That's what I thought, but when people put both things in, I have to be clear. All right. The other thing is that I guess it's a question. It's a question about community support. I know there are a lot of people who like the pond, but and I know that we just got a letter about that. But I guess my question is, in the broader sense, because this is an opening to other issues that will be coming down the pike in terms of the dredging and what have you, beyond the folks who kind of live around the area, where do you see the support coming?
Before my dog died last year, I walked this park twice a day for 8 years and ran into a lot of people there. The people who use the park are mostly in favor of doing, some people would prefer that it turns back into a swamp, but that doesn't seem to be the prevailing opinion. This is a much used park, and since the pandemic, even more so. It may be the most popular park in Greenfield. It's the largest, I believe, and this is the main water feature. I think I can raise some money for this. I think I could raise some money for the dredging too. So if that's a measure of popular support. But you have a point. I mean, the people who live just around it care the most. But a lot of people discovered it during the pandemic and have come to appreciate it.
Thank you. The reason I ask is that we now have a whole bunch of proposals that are all around the same area. And considering this is what we're doing, a citywide program, having support outside of the immediate neighborhood for some of these projects is going to be important.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
I would say to that too, that, yeah, Highland Park is like the most used by people from all over town, and also the mixed use. So historically, you know, the ice skating and the hockey games and all that stuff goes back 100 years. And if that were the case, if this was the tip of the iceberg to restoring it or something to that effect, that it would, the potential for it to be used and utilized by everybody across town for multiple purposes, you know, is exponential. You know, I mean, the ice skating, when there is ice, you know, a lot of people come there to ice skate and potentially to play hockey and all that stuff too. So.
Yeah, Giannis.
Yeah, so I just don't maybe understand enough. How compatible is this with things like letting the pond freeze over and being able to skate on it in the winter?
The aeration has nothing to do with that. The only way to get it, well, we don't know what global warming's going to do, so I can't promise that this thing will ever freeze over like it used to, but it has to be deeper, and it has to be deeper at the edges for people to safely get to the solid ice. And right now, it's so shallow at the edges that you fall in before you get to the deep water, which is why we're talking about sort of paths to the safe ice. Yeah, I mean, there would be 1,000 people on that pond when it was active skating, and the people that come to fish it all year, you know, all summer, who don't live right around it.
Can I just add on to that? I think the aeration would be removed in the winter. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So it would be removed before the winter, and then the water could freeze over and then put back out in the spring. Garth, did you have a question?
Yeah, I guess just related to that, like, you know, as someone who more or less lives in the neighborhood, I guess I don't see how the aeration affects the edges. Maybe I don't understand the physics of that, but from what I've seen, when it freezes over and it gets cold enough, it freezes plenty except for at the inlet and the outlet portion. So it doesn't seem to be an issue of where it's shallow. Like there's plenty of the vernal pools that freeze over and people like scooch around on those. I don't think that's the problem. And I guess my comment on the general support is, for better or worse, there's probably a couple thousand people in town that want it to be like the old days, and how come we don't have the warming hut, etc. And there should be, you know, official skating there, and the city can do nothing right at all. You know, so I think you'll have plenty of general support for it. Whether it's a good idea remains to be seen, I guess.
To answer your question about the aeration, it does nothing for the shallowness of the edges. This is it's almost an advertisement for what we might be able to do in the future, but it doesn't make the water any deeper.
Who was that? Wisty?
Yeah.
Yeah, having been a high school teacher, including biology, to make a body of water healthier again is pretty darn significant. And it really is more than an advertising issue. You know, it gets into education stuff. And the health of the body of water needs to happen before any of those other steps. So I just want to say, if that aeration can change the water quality and turn the water over and change the living matter that's there, it's huge.
I agree.
Tom?
My concern, I think this is a good project. I think, you know, it makes a lot of sense. And my concern is the area's been neglected for a long time. And if CPA money is put into the area, how is it going to be maintained? And I know, Christy, I really do understand and don't expect you to be able to come up with staff to do it when you don't have it. But if we spend, I think changing the water quality, step one, that's one thing. But if we move on to other areas and we look at the trails, you know, something volunteers start and they drop off. I've got skate parks that I can show you for that, but I want to be sure money that's being spent, I guess, is going to be well mentored over time. Otherwise, we're going to be going back and doing it all over again in 10 years. That's my only concern.
I guess one clip to add on to that. I believe you've talked to Marlo at DPW, and they said they would.
They said they're behind it. And they said if I can get it past the Conservation Commission, they're all for it.
And they would be the ones putting it in and taking it out, right?
Or me, yeah.
Or you, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know if you had a commitment from them that they were doing that.
If I get the money, I think I can get the commitment.
Okay. Are there any other questions at this point? Okay.
Thank you for your
No more
time.
questions? Yeah, thank you. Right. So next we have George with the Safe Bicycle link. Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone want to start off with any questions on this one?
Sure.
Go for it.
Is Deerfield putting in, do they have a commitment of yet, or are they applying for a commitment for this study? Because most of this is honestly in Deerfield. The Greenfield stuff is primarily done.
So as I wrote on the application, I have gotten a commitment from a Deerfield resident to present a similar application to their CPC. And I just had, there actually is another second Deerfield resident who's an avid cyclist who's planning to join in that. And that's why I put down an equivalent amount proposed for each of the two communities. Certainly the majority of the work would be in Deerfield, but it would be an enormous benefit to Greenfield cyclists to be able to get down there safely. And it just seemed to have it be equivalent made sense. I was just in communication with those two folks within the past couple of days, let them know of this meeting, and the deadline for the CPC applications in Deerfield is March 1st.
Thanks.
I don't know whose hand was up next.
Giannis's was.
Okay, Giannis, go ahead.
Mine's just a procedural question for you, Travis. Is it,
Sure.
Can we make funding contingent on Deerfield also ponying up their half?
I believe we can. We could say, you know, we'll fund half of this on the condition that you get the other half, you know.
Within
Yeah.
some time frame,
Yeah, otherwise the money would come back to us.
right?
I'm pretty sure we could do that.
Cool.
Tom?
My point would be if Deerfield also sees this as a win-win with the city, then it should go to the Franklin Council Regional Governments for a planning grant.
Okay.
That's,
Is that a question or is that just a statement?
no, that's a comment.
Okay, thank you.
I think Dave, did you raise your hand?
Can I respond?
Oh, yeah, sure.
I'll just say that the Deerfield has supported this, as I shared in the documentation, since 2000, their 2000 master plan. This was something that they envisioned and there was support for. And FERCog has, in multiple documents, supported the idea of a feasibility study for this alternative route. They have endorsed it in their documentation and their planning approaches, but they haven't funded it. So I was trying to follow up on their recommendation to pursue this. Thanks.
Dave?
Hi, George. Would you help me understand the kind of the organization of the project? First of all, I'll ask a couple of questions. I think you can probably weave them together. Who is the Mass Bicycle Coalition? And who is actually doing the work here and governing the project, if you will, the issuing of the RFP, the selecting of the consultants, the working with the consultants? How is the front end of this structured?
Well, to answer your first question, Dave, the Massachusetts Bicycle Coalition, also known as Mass Bike, is a statewide cycling advocacy group. They've been very instrumental in forwarding legislation and other efforts to improve cycling in the state. And I think it's spelled out in the application that, and I got some guidance from this on this from someone at FERCog who's been involved with these kind of projects. As far as putting out an RFP and, you know, that process, it's mentioned on page 5 of the application. And because the fiscal sponsor is the rec department, is Christie, so I'm sure we'd collaborate on that, but it would be somehow going through Christie, I assume, the RFP process officially. But Christie, I'll let you clarify that if necessary.
Yeah, it would go through our procurement officer, Laura Phelps. Yeah, with me and George's input.
Thank you. I had one other question. Again, I was hoping to get over there today and I didn't. But in looking at Google Earth, I'm wondering if Old Ferry Road is kind of the end of the project. You start at the river, going over the river at the bridge. And so is the project confined pretty much between the river and the beginning of Old Ferry Road?
Yes, that's the idea. That was what had been since 2000, the year 2000 in that master plan. That's what had been proposed as one possibility. There had also been a much more ambitious idea of a separate river crossing, which is obviously fiscally not very feasible. But the idea of, yes, using the bridge on 510 and as soon as it's feasible, getting off to the right into the fields there and connecting with Old Ferry Road. You know, I looked at some of the other applications and I saw these wonderful images, and I'm not a graphics guy, so it would have been probably helpful to have presented some materials like that where you could see it. I mean, I've certainly looked at it and it looks like you have, Dave. Yeah, sorry if that wasn't as helpful, but that's the basic idea, that it would be taking Old Ferry Road from Old Deerfield and then making that connection. Because I've ridden up there on Old Ferry Road for a mile and a half, something like that. So it's very rideable as is. Yep.
Okay, Susan?
Yeah, this is just quick. George, if you got partial funding, what would happen?
Well, I don't think it could proceed if there were partial funding. The 50,000, I'm no expert on this stuff or no experience. And my FERCog consultant, if you will, did some research and said that seemed like a reasonable amount. So I don't think you can do part of a feasibility study. I don't know if it's possible to get that for lesser funds, but I'm just going with people who have some expertise in this area, so.
And if I mean, we're trying to figure out how to do a whole lot of projects that are really good with a very small amount of money. So I'm just trying to figure out, is there any other resource that you would visualize yourself going for if we did a partial fund?
There's, as I put, there's a small potential of a small mini grant, just $1,000 from Mass Bike. They've offered those, and I think they're going to be offering them again this year. When I spoke with the president of the organization, but I'd looked also into the Mass Trails grants, but you already have to have something, and Christy would know this better than me, but I believe you already have to have something actually funded to then apply for that. So that had been suggested I look into it. When I researched it, it didn't seem applicable at this stage of just a feasibility study. It looked like it would be, if it were deemed feasible, it looks like a Mass Trails grant could be pursued for, some actual work, but not for the feasibility study. That's my understanding.
Okay, thank you.
And I don't know of any other source.
Thanks.
I was just going to add that this was another one of the projects that we talked to Stuart about all the projects. So just to let you know what Stuart, his reply on this, by the way, the last project he didn't really have much to say about. That's why I didn't say anything. But this one he said, Stuart and the coalition typically recommend against doing high hopes / long range feasibility studies in the first few years of CPA. And that studies are generally a city planning function, and also that relying on the Deerfield CPA makes it iffy. So that's not a criticism of you,
sure,
but
of course.
That's the feedback that we got from the Community Preservation Coalition.
Can I respond?
Sure.
Obviously, the city planning issue is problematic because it's across communities. As documented in the materials I sent with the application, I was actually shocked with the amount of enthusiastic support from all the entities in Greenfield, the Energy Committee, the Open Space and Recreation Committee, the CPC itself, and the Select Board. It seems a fair bet, I guess, that it has a good chance of getting CPC funding. Obviously, that's no guarantee, but it certainly was something that gathered universal support of the entities in Greenfield I approached.
Anyone have any other questions? Or Christy, do you have anything to add?
I just think this is a very unique project. George has done a lot of work, obviously, with our neighboring community, and to have a project that they equally support as much as us, I think is a check in the right box. I mean, trying to get a grant and rely on the neighboring city or town to get the same grant is not likely. So this is an opportunity for money to really do this study and figure out the best way to do it. And the other thing I was going to add, if people are not familiar with where this is, like George and I can get together and just take a screenshot with arrows. If people are not familiar with the location, I don't know if everyone knows where this project is.
Yeah, it'd probably be good to just send a map and, we can see.
Sure, we'll do that, George.
Thank you very much. Not my forte, but thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments on this project?
gonna be hard to decide. These are all really great ideas. We have so much money though, so I understand Stuart's comment about, early on in this process, maybe picking some more shovel-ready quick wins, but I do like this one.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so then the last project and the next project on our agenda is Joy Whitbeck's Highland Park signage project. So. Start off with questions on this one? Yeah, Dave.
This sounds like a really good project that I could see where it would have a lot of benefits, some are direct and some indirect over the course of time. I'm thrown off course by the price tag, and I'm just wondering what in the world can we do to carve this up a little bit, like a piece at a time, rather than swallowing the elephant whole. I just wonder if you had some thoughts on if there are ways to break. I know you've broken it down into a couple of phases, but is there a roadmap that could be put together to make this a little bit more palatable in terms of the dollar amount?
I suppose the mapping could be done as one piece that needs to be done first. We need to know what's out there and how it interacts with the other parcel that the park currently goes through. And the outreach to the property owners who currently own the land that we have trails through that mostly just let us kind of go through their trails, but it's not kind of any officially conserved land when it's the private land. So that would kind of be one step that could happen. They do kind of work so well and seamlessly together. I would hate to see us get, the mapping done and then not be able to like fully utilize what we now know and what we've invested in gaining that knowledge of the mapping.
I think maybe Christy has something to add.
Yeah, I can add to it. Obviously, as Joy just shared, this is kind of, you have to do the mapping first, and then obviously then we know where the trails are going to be and where all these trail markers and the gateway signs will be. But one of the things that certainly, if we don't need to do the easements and that kind of stuff, like we have a legal fee cost in here. So if we don't need that, then we won't use that, but we have to budget for it. If we find that we need obviously lawyers to for getting access legally with these right of ways and whatnot, or we have to reroute, but we can't do that. Lawyers aren't cheap, as we all know. And I am certainly not a lawyer, so I need their guidance to make everything be legal. And that was part of the reason also why, as I mentioned before, with the other project with the Mass Trails Grant, because some of these trails are on private property and we don't have this in place, you can't apply for these grants. So, and then the cost of just the kiosks and the design and all that kind of stuff, like obviously prices continue to go up. We've had this in our capital plan for years, but it's finally thanks to CPC and Joy's energy, and that the skate park will be done in June, we can move forward to this, it is pricey, but if we don't need all that money, it's coming back to you. I think we have to remember that.
Yeah, Tom, I want to get to you in a second, but before we move on, I just want to say that I'm a Greenfield nerd, I guess, and I was watching Capital Improvement Committee's meeting from December, and I know they voted to recommend funding this same project to City Council, and I'm not sure, is that for the full amount, or is that in addition to this amount?
So no, not knowing what's going to happen between Capital and you guys, we submitted for this project, and Joy and I have submitted with CPC. So my understanding is that Capital did approve it, but don't forget it goes to Capital and then it goes to the mayor and then it has to go to City Council, just like CPC. So they could approve it, you could approve it. Some money might come from each. I don't really know until the votes happen. So we may then need to rescind a financial order if one or the other funds it, but I want this project to happen. I think you all do too. So I'm going to try every avenue possible.
Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the project itself is great, and I think phase one obviously needs to be done. I'm a little concerned, and again, I don't know what work has been done, so let me rephrase that. I think there are other ways to go about the kiosks or the type of signage that could be significantly less expensive and as maybe not quite as attractive, but certainly as functional. Um, that's the first piece on that. And I think there are areas you can explore locally, and I'll be glad to chat with you offline about that if you're interested. The second just got brought up, and it is a key Tom peeve. This is a committee that can do these projects, but if the city, we should be kind of like the funder of last resort or a funder of match. I can see if the capital outlay and the mayor and the council said, we're not going to do 184,000, but we'll do 97,000. And maybe you put that in your capital plan and use CPC as part of your funding streams as you do a lot of the projects moving forward. Then there's a real partnership there, and we're not taking on something that the city probably should have done in the first place. And that's not just the city of Greenfield. That just happens, with every municipality. So I think, maybe we split it with the city.
Yeah, Christy, if you wanted to respond.
I appreciate Tom's, sense. Obviously, this is our first round, as I said, with CPC. And I never know, as I said at the last meeting, what we're going to fund. Capital Committee can approve something, but it gets to City Council. And I'm going up against health and safety, police, fire, DPW. So as important as those things are, my stuff is about the quality of life. And it doesn't always go in front of health and safety. So my job is to advocate, and I think that's what I'm doing right now. And I try really hard in this city to improve these parks.
And
And
let me just jump in, Christy, if I could. You're absolutely correct. In the recreation department in the city of Greenfield should be going to public safety, because you make safe communities. All of this works together to make a safe community. And you should be looked at as part of the public safety structure.
thank you, Tom. I appreciate those words. And then I want to comment, the design. Obviously, this is a design that we came up with, the rec commission, the mayor's office, it fits in with some of the architecture downtown. But we're going to hire a designer. It may not look like that. We have kiosks that are out there that are recycled lumber, because I like to use that, but they fall apart. They don't last. So I really need to get something that's going to be, be here until I retire or longer. And then Travis, if I can just Garth had asked a question about the capital timeline. If I could answer that, he put in the chat. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So the capital timeline follows our timeline with CPC. It will go to City Council, and they have to, the mayor will put the capital forward with the budget, and they have to vote on it 60 days after the mayor presented to City Council, which I believe the deadline for everybody to vote is May 31st. And I'm not sure, when I was talking to Christian today, he thought that CPC, correct me if I'm wrong, Christian, will be a little bit earlier for voting.
So this committee will vote on it in March to send it to City Council. And then the City Council can vote on it between any point up until June 30th, because we're going to be drawing from the current fiscal year. So hypothetically, they could vote on it earlier than capital, but it's very tight there. They're still very close to each other.
So does city council have to vote, sorry, if I can ask a question, within 60 days as well?
I don't know. I don't think there's that, maybe there is that requirement. I haven't seen it though, related to CPC specifically.
That was in the charter, so I don't know how it relates to CPC for the budget, operating budget.
Ginny raised her hand. She's a counselor. She might be able to answer.
Thank you for letting me speak. I'm a Ways and Means member, and we, generally speaking, every year we vote on the capital projects in April. And then we do the regular budget in May. So I think that the timing with this is going to work out perfectly. If you're voting in March and then we're voting in April, we'll know what you had done. So I just wanted to answer that question.
Okay, and then Susan had a question.
This kind of gets to the fact that we have, Christian, what is the final number now that we have the new number? How much money do we have?
335,000, but there's the 10,000 that has to go to each one, or the 20,000.
Right, so that even with the changes in the state budget, the addition, it's 335?
There might be some flexibility to bump it up a little bit now that we're pretty certain, but the finance department still wants to be pretty safe about it to the first year.
Good enough. Okay, so my point is that we've got $335,000 for 14 projects, all of which seem to be pretty credible in various ways. Can we get on this one is important, and I agree with people, but it's also a lot of money to commit for 1 year. We expect to be around for a while, and so if the first year we had a partial budget that we could begin the process, that might be something that we could do. So is there any way to break this budget down into phases so that we could look at year 1, year 2, year 3, or whatever that is? Because right now, if I have to do an all or nothing, I can't do an all because it's in relation to all the other things that have been asked for. I can't. So I would really appreciate it if there was some way to break this down. Thank you.
Tom, I don't know if you still had your hand up. Okay. Dave?
I want to, I'm sorry, I misunderstood perhaps. What was the total amount, Christie, that you suggested or proposed for your capital budget? The total amount of this project, was it the same amount?
Yes, it was, not knowing what was going to happen with either entity.
Okay, good, thank you. That's clear.
Okay, Garth and then Wisty.
Yeah, just in terms of like if it were broken up, and obviously I'm not the designer of this project, but it certainly seems like one could do the mapping and print, sort of get some fees, do some construction, do some mapping in 1 year, and then if we're like, oh, all right, now we need another 100,000 to actually put up all the kiosks with those maps on it, that would be it seems at least a plausible breakdown of steps. I don't know if the applicants are interested in that, or if we're interested in that, but that would certainly seem like a plausible thing. I feel like I saw some emails going around the Mass Trails grant was not applicable, or we didn't get it or whatnot for this one. Was that correct?
Can I respond, Travis?
Sure, go ahead.
So yeah, it's the same thing that I said with Kim's project, that the city did not apply for any Mass Trails grant because of the match requirement and the timing. We looked at it for multiple different things. As far as the phases, I certainly can look closer at the budget. Obviously, Joy took all those numbers for me in our capital project. So not to speak for you, Joy, but I can work on potentially doing different phases. My notes that I just wrote down obviously would be the trail mapping, the legal work and design, and then construction can be later. However, this is where, like, if you guys vote first and vote for that, and then I have capital, like somebody, there'll be a change somewhere, whether it's a change in the financial or with what you guys give, or capital, depending on timing. So, and then we would just rescind that vote and adjust it if need be. Just want to make sure everyone understands that.
Wissy, did you still have a question?
Yeah, yes. And it also goes to Ginny. So Ginny, when you said that the timing seemed just right, given what your committee does in April and our decision, are you kind of suggesting maybe that if we decide to give X amount of money and it's not the whole bunch, that you might decide to give the other amount?
Yeah, Jenny, go ahead.
Yes, when I had my remarks at the end, I was going to say a little bit more about that, but yes, that could be, if we had partial funding, that would be. And I think that Christie knows too what came out of the Capital Improvement Committee, which things were approved and which weren't. So yes, I do think that it's possible that we could put more in, and then it's possible that there's like I think just one thing that I'm thinking of that probably won't.
Okay,
Didn't look like it was going to pass.
Thank you. And so then, Travis, I have another question, which, is there anything legal or illegal about us kind of coordinating and asking, like, instead of this being a guessing game, are you allowed to ask, like, could we go to the other appropriate committees and say, what are you willing to fund and what, do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think Tom might have an answer. He just raised his hand.
So, yeah, you can certainly, and it certainly should be from intra-city about that. But certainly when the CPC would look to the rec department and the rec department wanted something, they'd say, okay, yeah, if capital will come up with half, we'll come up with half. And, we would, if the project made sense, if it was a project that should be strictly undertaken by the city for whatever reason, or strictly brand new that, CPC could do, we'd do that. But where there was room to be able to help the city offset some of its capital expenses on these projects, we would do that.
Okay, Susan.
We can certainly make things contingent too, right? We can say, like, we're going to give $40,000 contingent upon, the city coming up with the rest of X, Y, and Z for this project. And if that doesn't happen, then it's, it's not a CPA project. For
that year,
for any of them, right? We can put that in the contract.
Yeah, Susan's had her hand up for a while. Susan, you're muted, by the way.
Okay, I'm sorry. We could also, I'm thinking about the Mass Trails funding. Now, Christy, what kind of match do you need for that? If you were to have a Mass Trails application.
If I can, it's not a match dollar for dollar. It's just they want to see funding from some other source. So it could be a smaller amount.
Okay, so what I'm thinking is, if one of the things we could do is possibly fund a piece of this now and we can make a commitment of our money that's coming in for next year and possibly support a match for Mass Trails, which could be helpful to you. Does that make sense? I'm just trying to figure out ways to make our money go as far as it can, depending on what we can offer.
Because the Mass Trails grant, I believe, opens in November and then closes on February 1st this year. So for this round of it, there isn't time to get this funding approved and then go for that not match, but that additional funds. But potentially in the future, if this is funded, it would, and we could carry over and apply, in 2023, there is that potential.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking about is, obviously we can't fund the whole thing. If there are a way to fund a piece and then to also support your efforts with Mass Trails and do whatever kind of negotiations we can do with the council, there might be a way to piece together all the money that you need to do this. It's not that it's not that we don't want to fund the project, but it's a lot of money in relation to what we have. And that I think that's the question that's in front of all of us.
Just to give everyone a time check, at 6:47, Christy, you had your hand up if you want to respond to that.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I am optimistic and I'm hesitant when I say that between the two entities that we will be able to fund this. And what I'll do is I'll work on the phase one, as I just shared kind of stuff with Garth, his question about what would go in phase one. And then if city council can fund the rest, or I could be lucky and city council funds the whole thing, and then you guys have more money to do our other rec projects. So I never know what's going to happen with the council, but I think that they are really in support of this project.
Thank Christian.
Yeah, just based on this whole conversation between city council funding, other sources of funding versus CPC, I just wanted to read from the internal guideline release. So the prohibited expenditures, this is the first thing you can't do. To supplant funds being used for existing expenses, even if they serve community preservation purposes. The CP fund is a supplementary funding source intended to increase available resources for community preservation, acquisitions, and initiatives. So we had this in our conversation with Stuart. Basically, if it's a competition between two funding sources, CPA should not be the one that goes first. It should not be the one that gets spent first. If there was a capital expenditure and a CP fund appropriation, the capital one would have to be spent first. So I just wanted to add that into the conversation.
Thank you, Christian. That's helpful.
Yeah, Tom, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Christian, but there's the guidance and then there's the reality of how municipalities have to function, and they don't always coincide together. This isn't supplanting money. This is, I get it, and we should go last. But if the capital fund request were changed to 97.4 as opposed to 184, we wouldn't be having this discussion. Just saying.
Okay. Yeah, Christy.
The other thing with the funding, and I think this is why Christian brought this up, like, if capital is from any sort of borrowing, as a fiscal responsibility, you would not want to borrow. You would want to use the money that we currently have on hand, which is CPC. So I don't know if our attorneys need to look at that. That was a conversation I've had with the mayor's office.
Yeah, we could use free cash too.
Okay. We're supposed to have 10 minutes left in our meeting. Does anyone have any other questions or comments on this one?
I have a comment. I actually had a couple of comments. I was waiting till the end. Now I have to shut this timer off.
Okay. If you want to talk, if this is like for the public comment period, I think we have another agenda item before we get to that.
Pardon me. Sorry.
That's okay.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thank you. Okay. All right. So next on our agenda is a press release for applications and Donna's draft of public feedback form. Did that draft get sent to everyone?
I did not send it out because I didn't realize how close she was to finishing it. She's pretty much completed it. She's not here. We do have another meeting coming up pretty soon. I don't know if she'll be able to be at it. But if she's not, I have access to it, so I can do the final tweaks to it and present it to all of you at that point. And then after that, we'll be doing the press release pretty soon after the next meeting. So
Okay, so we should wait until the next meeting and,
yeah, I think that'd probably be best.
okay. Yeah, so I guess if you could send that to everyone before the next meeting, and then we can all come back with feedback and finalize that. And then we'll do a press release to get people to submit comments through that. And then also, maybe we'll set our public hearing time, and maybe that could be included too. That'll be for next time. All right, anyone else have anything to add on that? Okay. All right, so now we are at public comment period, 2 minutes per speaker. Let's throw it over to Jenny. I know she's been waiting.
Okay, I'm gonna try to be quick. 2 minutes. I don't live near, I live at the other end of town, don't live near Highland Park. But I walk, and it's the place that's the coolest during the summer. I use that all the time as somebody from the other end of town. I didn't see anywhere else on capital budget that the aerator was, and I would definitely support that. And next, I have good news. I came the last time and spoke about recreation projects, and we had disability access this afternoon. We voted $600 out of the handicap parking fund. We have $5,600. We voted $600 to go towards the track access. That was a $1,300 project that was presented to you. So it was about half. And then the bocce courts accessibility issues, we voted $4,500 to go towards that in hopes that you would pass that. And because that did not make it through capital committee very well, and the accessibility issues there, that's a park that everybody could use. So we put the bulk of what we had left towards that. So that's my feedback on that. And what else did I have to say in my 2 minutes? That's all, and I've already spoken that I was for you putting a generous amount of that towards housing. And George, on the bike paths, I think that's a great idea. There are people that are sitting here. I thought the accessibility, I hate the thought of people riding on the busy street on 5 and 10, and I thought that was a worthwhile project too. I realized there's only so much money to go along to go around to everyone, but from my end, I just wanted to say what I did know a little bit about what came out of capital, and I was concerned about the one that we put $4,500 to, and you'll be getting a notice about that. So that's my 2 minutes worth. But thank you everybody for all your time. I can't believe the hours that you're devoting to this. And I really think that the funding to go for recreational things, it's very hard, like Christy said, to get funding when you're up against fire and safety and things that are an absolute necessity, but the quality of life is really added with our recreational things. So that's it.
Thank you. Anyone else like to make a public comment? Yeah, go for it.
Please, Travis, thank you. I think that Highland Park is a treasure in our town. When I was exploring 20 plus years ago, exploring a few communities in the valley to decide where to move to, visiting that area was part of what tipped the scales for my partner and I to move here to Greenfield. And so I was delighted to see that I was sharing the agenda with 3 Highland Park projects. And I think they all have value. I do think that the first 2, the pond and the trail improvement, I think should be prioritized, partly because of the cost factor. I got some sticker shock when I saw the signage and wayfinding. And also, when we're talking about wayfinding, I think it's important to improve the actual resources that you're going to find. So I think making the trail more functional and starting the process of improving the pond, because I think the pond is so many of us just value that pond so much. And I've seen, plenty of people playing ice hockey on there and stuff like that. So I think it's a real valuable resource. I do think I think the other project is important, and I was happy to hear that it can be potentially funded by the capital improvement stuff. So I hope that's able to go forward as well. Yeah, that's it. I just think those are all great. When I was looking over all 14 or other 13 others, those really stood out for me. And it was nice to hear about them tonight. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Oh, yeah.
As a bicyclist who will go all the way to Upper Road to Lower Road to avoid that 5 and time thing, I'll ride it when I have to, but that would be such a huge improvement to get that road passed. I appreciate your remarks about that. Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone in person or virtual? Okay, no more public comments. All right, so that is, let me get back to my agenda here. I think that's the last thing on the agenda. Yes, that was the last thing on our agenda. So our next meeting is January 26th, 2023, 5:30 p.m. right here in the City Hall meeting room. Christy's got something. Go for it, Christy.
I just have a logistics question. So now that the accessibility has graciously given us the 600 and the 4,500, would you like me just to revise our application? How do you want to handle that for the matching piece?
I don't know. Does anyone have any preference of whether the applicant sends an updated, or we could just lower the amount that we recommend?
Yeah.
That's fine. I like not having less work.
It might be good to send at least
It's probably worth just having a note in with the application saying, like, the ADA committee has voted to appropriate X amount to this project.
Yep, that is forthcoming.
Yeah, I guess if you just send that.
Yeah, like a one-pager on your letterhead, Christy, so that way I'm more worried about when it gets to council if there's not something in there that explicitly says that.
Right, me too. Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. So as I was saying, our next meeting is January 26th at 5:30 p.m. here in the City Hall meeting room or remotely. Anyone would like to make a motion to adjourn?
Question?
Oh, sure.
Do you, I assume that you expect these minutes to be done before the 26th.
I think generally that's how we've been doing them.
I will do my best.
I think technically it's there's like 3 meetings.
Yeah, you have up to 3 meetings.
No, I'll try to. 2 weeks should be okay. I'm just half joking, but
okay.
Putting a word of caution out there too.
Okay, Susan's got a question.
Yeah, Travis, just as a warning, who's the next person in line?
Oh yeah, who is the next? Who's after Tom? Well, we're skipping me, I think. I don't think I'm chairing.
Yeah.
Wisty?
Wisty, yeah. Yeah, Wisty.
Do I get to go by my legal name? No, I'm fine.
Well, you're on our website as Wisty, so I think that's how it has to be. All right.
If it's on the website, it must be true.
Did someone motion to adjourn? Sorry,
I did.
Okay, motion to adjourn.
Second.
Everyone in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye. All right. We are adjourned at 7:01 p.m. Only 1 minute late.